In March of 2015, Bloodborne was released as a PS4 exclusive. Created by From Software and considered by many to be a spiritual successor to the Souls franchise, the game was met with critical acclaim upon release and hailed as one of the first true gems of the console. Now, as hard as this may be to believe, there are many out there that have still yet to experience the punishing brutality of a From Software title. So I thought, what better way to assist newcomers than by creating a helpful guide for those either not as adept at this style of gameplay or overwhelmed with the task they are about to undertake. So without further ado, I present to you 15 tips for playing Bloodborne. Coming in at number 15 is play Demon Souls or Dark Souls first. While From Software has gone on record with saying that Bloodborne is a new IP unto itself, there's no denying that seasoned players of either Demon Souls or Dark Souls will have a distinct advantage over those just getting their feet wet. And this is true for almost every aspect of gameplay, whether it be figuring out how your character moves, to managing your inventory and quick item system, to properly reading stats and choosing your equipment and weapons accordingly. It's a true testament to the age-old adage, practice makes perfect, and while Bloodborne will bring surprises for amateurs and veterans alike, those with a seasoned hand will have a much easier time adapting to what's ahead. Coming in at number 14 is the fact that Bloodborne has no pause button. Admittedly, this is one of the lamer tips on this list, but it's easy to forget that there is no pause button in Bloodborne. What that means is, even when you bring up your inventory screen, the game is still running in the background, so be sure to plan your bathroom breaks accordingly, and don't be surprised to see all of your blood echoes gone if you decide to leave at the wrong time. Coming in at number 13 is to position quick items strategically for easy access. While even in the most frantic of times, it's possible to predict enemy movements and attack patterns, it's not uncommon to be caught off guard suddenly or to be swarmed by several enemies at once. Therefore, making sure you have quick access to certain items is not only convenient, but necessary. Knowing where items are placed on your quick selection at a moment's notice to the point where it becomes automatic might sound silly, but can also save you in a pinch along with your blood echoes. Coming in at number 12 is to upgrade your attire or armor early. While it's important to develop an attack strategy, upgrade your defense stats, and spend your blood echoes accordingly, your clothing within the game is one of the only lines of defenses against enemy attacks aside from your primary and secondary weapon. It's a passive stat that, if upgraded accordingly over the progress of your game, will help mitigate deaths, but depending on what you're wearing, can also boost your stats and in some cases give you some pretty impressive skills and abilities. Most NPC vendors will offer some form of clothing upgrade in the beginning of the game, so it's a good idea to upgrade this early. Coming in at number 11 is don't spend your blood echoes on blood vials. Blood vials are essentially healing potions in Bloodborne, and are usually dropped once enemies are defeated. Similarly, they are offered by most NPC vendors for purchase by the player, but honestly, these items are so prevalent throughout the game that you're better off saving your echoes and spending it elsewhere, whether it be for better equipment, better weapons, or overall better stats. Coming in at number 10 is explore everywhere. One of the more exciting aspects of Bloodborne is that the game often rewards players for exploration. Players are usually presented with multiple options when progressing through locations, as the world of Yharnam is full of areas that are interconnected. Similarly, players that decide to take the road less traveled are often rewarded for their efforts in the form of special items. Also, if something looks out of place, it was probably done so by the game's designers, so don't be afraid to seek out unexplored terrain. Coming in at number 9 is to watch out for lamps. Throughout the world of Bloodborne, you'll come across lit oil lamps before various homesteads. Now these doors, while inaccessible, will still allow you to communicate with NPCs on the other side, which can provide you with valuable information, items, and even side quests in some cases. And don't be afraid to keep talking to these NPCs once the conversation is finished. Oftentimes it'll take repeated tries before something tangible happens. Coming in at number 8 is don't fight enemies in groups. One of the quickest ways to die in Bloodborne is to have your stamina depleted only to be swarmed by a group of enemies. To that end, it's better to kill them individually rather than to take them on as a full group. And one of the ways to do this is with pebbles. Pebbles are objects in the game that allow you to get the attention of meandering enemies, thereby allowing you to pick them off one at a time. While this tactic is more useful towards the beginning of the game, it's also an easy way to gain blood echoes quickly without dying, as well as gain experience and hone your attack strategy early on. Coming in at number 7 is to go on the offensive. One of the big differences between Bloodborne and the Souls franchise is that for most of the game, you're playing with a secondary weapon instead of a shield. This changes how you play dramatically, as players will have to adopt a more defensive strategy in lieu of a block and attack style of gameplay. Another addition is Bloodborne's regain system, which allows players to, within a small period of time, recover portions of lost health by striking an enemy, actually rewarding you for going on the offensive. And while not having a shield does take some getting used to, this new risk and reward system encourages players to adopt a more offensive strategy without hindering their progress. Coming in at number 6 is to use space effectively. Without a shield to block enemies, players will have to avoid attacks through dodging and maneuvering. To do this requires a lot of room, so it's best to avoid thin hallways and cramped areas when fighting enemies. Be sure to fight in wide open areas free of any obstructions. Similarly, you can also use obstacles like walls and pillars to block enemies from attack. Coming in at number 5 is read everything. One of the more impressive aspects of Bloodborne is the ability for players to communicate with one another online with the ability to leave and rate messages around the game world. And while most notes given by other players are done with good intentions, offering helpful tips and warnings to players of upcoming traps or surprises, others intentionally mislead the player with messages like, "Great item ahead," only to be ambushed by several enemies or causing them to fall to their death. For the most part, however, these messages provide real help to the players, so be sure to read them whenever possible. Coming in at number 4 is don't be afraid to read guides online. Bloodborne is a complicated, complex game with many moving parts to it, including stats, items, weapons, guilds, enemies, bosses, and NPCs, all of which are part of a vast interconnected world. Needless to say, it can all be overwhelming to a player first starting out. Rest assured, that feeling is also felt by seasoned players as well. Bottom line, there's nothing wrong with turning to YouTube or the Bloodborne Wiki online for some helpful tips, or if you're stuck in a particular area. Trust me when I say it's very unlikely you'll uncover every secret in Bloodborne on your first playthrough, so feel free to read to your heart's content. Coming in at number 3 is to observe your surroundings. Now this reason is similar to reason 10 with explore everything, but in addition to exploring the various areas throughout the game world of Bloodborne, it's just as important to be observant of your surroundings. Look for inconsistencies in the terrain, the way areas and rooms are laid out. If something looks out of place or asymmetrical to the space's design, don't be afraid to see if there's a hidden door or area, because if there is, it will often yield some very impressive rewards. So wherever you go and whatever you do, always observe your surroundings. Coming in at number 2 is timing is key. When an enemy is stunned, the player can perform a visceral attack, essentially a one-hit strike from behind an enemy that causes a lot of damage. And this is where timing is key. Learn how to counter an enemy attack early on with low-level enemies that probably won't kill you with one hit. And coming in at number 1 is be prepared to die. A lot. Unlike in Dark Souls, where if you die you enter a hollow state, taking on a dead appearance and thereby losing half your health in addition to all your souls, that doesn't happen in Bloodborne. So while dying in the game will cause you to lose your blood echoes, that's pretty much the extent of it. And you will die in this game, so while a cautious approach is necessary at times, don't be afraid to take chances from time to time. Or most of the time. Bloodborne is all about experimentation, about adapting to different circumstances when the need arises according to the situation. But most importantly, it's about having fun, so be prepared to die. And there you have it, 15 tips for playing Bloodborne. Now, maybe you have your own tip for playing Bloodborne that I didn't put on this list that might help players just starting out with the game. In that case, feel free to put a comment in the comment section below, and as always, feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel. That being said, I'm the Millennium Gamer, signing off.